You know, I love the Classics line, but this is not a great update for Ultra Magnus. We really deserve something better. It's just a bummer that Classics is essentially just a little subline, and the biggest class we get is Voyager, so I doubt we'll see him in the full armor. You know, this fan company making an Ultra Magnus upgrade kit was really cool. It kind of gave us what we were looking for, and it's still in the Classics aesthetic. I hope that third-party fan companies do something this cool all the time. But, you know, it's still not quite G1 Magnus. It's definitely Classics Magnus, but maybe we could do better. You know what? Having Generations Leader class gave us a pretty neat Ultra Magnus. In fact, they worked the cab into the actual torso design instead of being a separate inner robot. You know, the only thing that I don't like about this, though, is the fact he's so IDW styled. I like the comics, but I kind of miss blocky old Magnus. Well, okay, at this point, I'm just glad we got a new Magnus. Still a little bummed out that he is inner white Optimus Prime-like robot with armor, and he feels really tiny. I know he's a leader class, and boy, leader class isn't what it used to be, but he's just so small. Well, they made the Siege mold a little more G1, but he's still got kind of the Cybertronian legs. Boy, I wish we could get a Magnus that integrated the robot that was properly, like, large, and the car carrier actually worked, and actually looked like the movie, and not just kind of like this full stylization. I mean, everybody else getting that treatment, why not Magnus? Oh my god. They finally made exactly what I was asking for.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to my review of the Transformers Studio Series 8621 Ultra Magnus. The first ever Studio Series Commander class figure. Very curious to see how it's going to be compared to some other Commander class figures, but I am all for a brand new Ultra Magnus. I have yet to find my satisfactory all-time forever Ultra Magnus figure. The Siege and Kingdom ones are nice, but I've always had this point of contention that if the cab turns into an inner robot and then has power armor on top of it, that's a powered convoy. That's not an Ultra Magnus. I have a very decisive thing about this. I very much feel strongly about Magnus needs to be the cab turning into the whole robot. So let's take a look. I wanted to highlight how he was packed. Recent Commander class figures have just been in truck mode in the middle of a box. This guy's packed out pretty normal. There's some instruction sheets. All of his accessories are there. I'm assuming his ears are in there because they're not on there. And there's his robot. And then he's rested in the dumb backdrop thing. This is a gimmick that Studio Series has had since the very beginning. The idea of like, oh look, you get a cardboard backdrop and you can put your figure in it. And it like is the environment from the movie, and I couldn't care less. I do not have room to display all my Studio Series figures in these backdrops, nor do I really have room to keep keeping these. You know, they're officially listed as accessories. So if I ever want to resell any of my Studio Series stuff, I better have that backdrop for value and all that, but I could not care less about the stack of these I got, and this one's just even bigger than all the others. And that's it. You're not seeing it any further. I would like to issue a formal apology to Legacy Armada Optimus Prime, who I previously reviewed, saying that he was probably one of the best Transformers of the year, or the best, or my favorite, or whatever I said. I praised him pretty good. Magnus is something special. So let's take a look at Studio Series Commander Class Ultra Magnus. He was packed in robot mode, so we are going to start there. Like, you know, starting in vehicle mode's cool, but it was packed in robot mode, so let's begin, you know, how you get it out of the box. Not exactly, because I've attached all his little doodads. Like I mentioned in the unboxing, the ears are separate for whatever reason, and they are just in the little bag of paper stuff that was taped so much that it took me a couple minutes to get it open. Personally speaking, I have picked up, you know, as I showed in that opening montage, I have picked up like every Ultra Magnus that's come out. I did not buy the Masterpiece, and I did not buy all the ones that are just white Optimus Prime repaints, because I think that's a lazy way to do Ultra Magnus. I think the only time he actually was a white Optimus Prime repaint was in the Dreamwave comics. A lot of people are like, do I need another Magnus? I've asked myself that same question with Cup, with Blur, with RC, with Hot Rod, several other characters. Like, they tend to go over some of the main heavy hitters a lot, and the 86 movie does get a lot of love. And even going into Studio Series 86, I was like, do I want to rebuy everybody? But I have now. I do really love that movie. But specifically with Ultra Magnus, I've never been totally satisfied. There was other versions that I was kind of like into, like City Commander. You know, if you put City Commander in display with just Classics figures, you know, because of the Fans Project third-party kit, You put City Commander in a display with just Classics. Terrific. He matches stylistically to what Classics was doing. But as the Generations line has gone more G1, the less he fits. As we've gotten on with the line, I liked the Combiner Wars one. I really like this one. And that's because, you know, stylistically speaking, he is more IDW, but we were getting a lot of IDW figures at the time, so it kind of goes hand in hand. The two of them here kept the let's have Magnus transform with the cab integrated into the trailer, which is something the Titanium figure did. I never bought the Titanium figure because Titanium figures were terrible, but the Titanium figure I think was the first one to do that. The Masterpiece also did that because it is more stylistically animated designed, but the Masterpiece is a bunch of kibble, and I don't trust the quality of Masterpiece because of how many have broken. So for me, this was my, all right, finally got a Magnus that stylistically does what I want it to do, which is having that, you know, cab integrated into the torso like that. That's something I really like. I don't like Magnus as a set of armor for a white Optimus Prime. That being said, you know, I wasn't totally satisfied with that stylistically, so we had the Siege one. And the Siege one, I like the way the Siege one did, the extra detail. I like how the vehicle mode looks like the Robots in Disguise Ultra Magnus, but he's back to the Optimus Prime in armor. So I liked it, but it also, like, he was so tiny. And then going for, you know, the most recent prior to this was the Kingdom mold, which I never got the Kingdom mold because I just bought the Siege, and I was like, I don't want to rebuy this one. I don't like it that much. But when they put out the Shattered Glass Magnus that had the Delta Magnus head, I was super into that because I was like, that's a different figure. But even having that in hand, all right, this is definitely more G1 and probably would serve the purpose. He does just feel really small, and his articulation is limited, and I just really wanted a Magnus that wasn't a robot with armor. Coming into the Commander class, hearing about him from listings, I was like, this could be literally the last Ultra Magnus for G1 I ever need, and I'm happy to report that he is. So now, with all that aside, and now I've done all the comparisons of the Magnuses, let's take a look at him and figure out why he is what I consider the best Magnus. So first things first, head sculpt wise, he's not 100% stylistically accurate to the cartoon. That's fine because that shifted and changed depending on who was animating him. But I think overall I like the proportions on the head, and I love the fact his light piping is super intense. By having the entire back part here clear, he will get light piping from any angle, and if you have a light directly above him, his eyes are going to glow really, really well. But you can see there's kind of a glow effect going even with the lights being all over here, and that's really, really impressive, especially as you turn them. You can see the light cascading through his eyes. Light piping like that doesn't work that way hardly anymore. Minor complaint, I do wish these little tab things had somewhere to go because you either keep them folded down like this. I think they look a little bit better like this. They just are a little distracting, but the solidity in vehicle mode is a good trade-off for that. He's got the shoulder rockets. They sit about right. You can actually remove the rockets from the shoulders, and that's really, really cool. And then on top of that, he comes with blast effects, so you can have it where it's like, oh, you just fired the rocket. And I think that is really, really awesome that it's compatible with that that weapon system. The chest is really cool because, you know, normally we don't have clear windows on Magnus, and these aren't windows for the vehicle mode. They're just clear windows so you can see that the Matrix of Leadership is inside. And it's actually pretty cool. He comes with the Matrix of Leadership, and it has an opening gimmick. If you pop this and lift it up, boom. It's spring-loaded. You know, I don't mind that. Even if these springs wear out, as long as this locking mechanism stays in there, it's going to be fine. The Matrix is removable out of the chest, and if you pop it out, you can see it looks tiny. It's too tiny for him to hold. That's kind of the thing with the Matrix. It mass shifts in the animation, but it does have clear plastic through it. I believe this is the same that came with the Studio Series Hot Rod. And yeah, you can put it right in there, and you can have it in his chest. But if you want him out of his chest, because you're like, oh, Hot Rod's got the Matrix, you can pull it out and then close the chest up like this. And you can see that there's no Matrix inside, and it kind of just looks like robot stuff. So it's not distracting that it's not there. For the sake of not losing this until I get him properly on shelf, I'm probably going to display him without the Matrix, but I'm just going to put it right there. So I think that looks pretty cool. But yeah, I love that they gave him the actual Matrix cavity. That's something we haven't had on anything except for the Masterpiece. He is pretty plain on the legs, just because that's design-wise how it is. But one thing I did want to highlight is the fact this guy has like no back kibble. In case you didn't notice when I was doing the turnaround. This is like insane to me because a lot of Ultra Magnus figures, you know, when we talk about the Combiner Wars, he's got like tires hanging off the back. Even the Siege one has that kind of messy backpack going on. So it's just really cool to see a Magnus just be completely clean like this. Even the Masterpiece isn't this clean, and that's why I think this is probably the best Magnus. essentially this video is proving my case that this is the best Ultra Magnus toy. So what's also great is he has articulation, and with Ultra Magnus, because of the design, it can sometimes be hard to do that. When you have a suit of armor, it just restricts whatever articulation is on that inner body. But here we've got a full ball joint head that tilts all the way back, which is great. He can look down, he can look side to side, really expressive. He of course has 360 shoulders, they're on ratchets. They can also move out like this. If you want, you can unlatch this part here and you can swing the shoulder forward however you wish on that joint, which I think is really, really good. You've got an elbow bend. It's a single joint, but it goes a full 90. You do have, of course, a bicep swivel here. It's on a mushroom peg, so be careful you don't just like rotate it off. And then you have a wrist swivel, and then each of the fingers is articulated. So say the first finger is articulated, and then the other 3 are articulated as well. So that way, and then there's a circle clip, so you can put the weapons in his hands. But this way you could have him like point, because he did a lot of pointing, especially in the movie, when he's like, RC Springer, go prepare Autobot City for lockdown, or whatever the line was. He can actually like point dramatically, which I think is really, really cool, because that's a very Magnus thing to do. He is the commander. He's like supposed to be the second in command of the Autobots at that time. He does have a waist swivel, which, as you'll see when we do the transformation, is pretty cool. And then the hips that move out, they move forward, and this little flap gets out of the way. They move back, and that flap gets out of the way. You have a thigh swivel, you have a knee joint, full 90, and then you have an ankle tilt here as well. Something to note, the tires, this is a step that can get missed in transformation. If you leave the tires out, he will be a little bit more wobbly, but if you put the tires back up like that, it's all flat, and then boom, he is super stable. And then in terms of quality and stability, I think he's really, really good, because like you shake him and yeah, you're gonna get some of the legs to move, but he's not falling apart in any way, which I think is terrific. Speaking of falling apart though, there is a gimmick in here. It's kind of the weird morbid thing with the Studio Series 86 between they're doing a dead Ironhide and Prowl 2-pack to Cup being able to remove his limbs. It's kind of a thing that they've been doing. So like with Cup, you know, he lost a leg and he lost an arm in the movie, so they kind of made it removable on 5mm pegs, which allowed for some cool customs I've seen people do. I don't like this because for me, I've been getting the worst luck. It's not as bad on Cup as it is on Dion and Orion packs, where it's like, they'll just, like on him, he's fine. Like nothing's coming off, but Dion and Orion packs, their limbs just fall off without like any effort. And I don't like that gimmick. But on Magnus, they improved it. So you can remove both arms and both legs to simulate the sweeps blowing him apart or tearing him apart if you read the comic adaptation based on the original animation. But essentially in here, this is what I like about it. It's not just a 5mm peg. You have this little latch. It's a red latch. And then you slide that off the joint. And it works like the Combiner Wars joints. It's not the same size, so you can't really just like slap a Combiner leg on here. I like that better because now, you know, again, he's so solid, that leg isn't going anywhere, because it's locked in with a spring-loaded mechanism. And then for the arms, it's actually trickier because you need to flip this up and then find the latch under here and then slide it off of that. So with that said, I do really like this gimmick because it's not intrusive to the overall figure. It's not going to wear down with a QC problem over time. It's not just going to fall off when you're trying to transform him because it's so locked in. So I really appreciate that. Plus, you can do dioramas like this. Open, damn it, open. Magnus, I want the Matrix. Never. Sweeps, exterminate him. Ah. Okay, so while the Junkions reassemble him, let's look at some accessories. He comes with 2 different rifles. This smaller one is the one he had on Junkion, so that's pretty cool. We'll look at the compatibility in a moment. And he comes with this larger one, which is definitely the one he normally carries. It's definitely the bigger size for sure. And then on top of that, like I mentioned, there were some blast effects. So essentially, it's the same blast effects we got with Omega Supreme, so it's different explosions and blasts and things that work in different sizes. So I really do like the variety of options here, from the blast effects to the little explosions to the little, I like these shooty ones the most. They are really, really nice. Hey, the Junkions are done. Look at that. They got Magnus back together. Thank you, Wreck-Gar and Junkheap. All right, before we take a look at the guns in Magnus's hands, they actually both store on the back of the figure. So if you want, you can actually store these. There's a, you can see the clear plastic tab sticking up. That way the paint doesn't scrape, which is nice. That just plugs in right there on the back of his waist. And then you can also put this one, it's got a little clear plastic tab there, right there. So he's got both weapons as storage, which is great. I love that. I love when you can store the accessories with them, because that way you don't lose any of them. But pretty cool. But if you do want them to hold them, you of course can just take them out, fold the hand up, and then pose him with either of these. You can have, you can actually have them wield both. It's not illegal by any means. So you got that going on, which is pretty cool. And then, like I said, you can put the blast effects on here. Now, they do look a little weird. Like when they're in the missile launchers, they're perfect because this little section here, this kind of looks like it has a straight shot and then it goes to the full barrel. But the nice part too is, again, these are clear plastic tips, so they don't interact with the silver rubbing off. But I would have liked to seen plugs that could have worked instead. I think the tips, you know, it just looks a little weird from some angles. Like from straight on, you're never going to notice, but any side angle is going to look a little strange. And that pretty much goes for all of them, like especially that one. That one just doesn't look quite right. But yeah, you got that option on both the weapons. I think the blast effects are cool, and I will probably use them with other figures, more so than Magnus himself. Okay, so his transformation is kind of different than anything I've seen with Magnus. Of course, we've got to like remove all his guns and stuff, because that's just standard things. But yeah, he's actually got a lot of really cool transformation tricks. So that was what surprised me the most, is that as many Ultra Magnus figures as we had, as many as, you know, we even had like the IDW one had done this style, I like that it's got like this kind of double hinge thing to cover the hands as opposed to like a sliding mechanism, because that means it doesn't fall down when it's displayed in robot mode. It's like locked in. Super, super cool on that. You get the feeling for every component of Magnus, and you don't have to like tear him apart and make him explode into a bunch of pieces in order to pull that off. In fact, I actually love that that is ratcheted, because that keeps it standing when it's in robot mode. But yeah, it's really cool because unlike some other transformations we've seen recently, a lot of things tab together incredibly well. We're going to kind of just do the lower legs first here. This is probably like my least favorite part of the transformation, is that you have to kind of, if you can notice in here, there's some extra joints. You got to click these back and push them forward, so that way it kind of lines up like that. And then that way when you come down here, you want to lift this up so that those red plates click into place there, which is pretty solid. That's the part I really like about this, is it feels super solid. We also want to pull the tires down. I mentioned earlier they didn't want them down while they're feet, but of course we want them down now that they're going to be car parts. So the other part that, of course, you're probably wondering about was, well, how does the cab section work? Well, let's see. Essentially, the instructions and like the official way to do it is kind of to keep the cab together, like attached to it. And you totally can. I found that in my experience with him, it's best to just get the cab kind of out of the way. So this section here, the whole head and part like that, is the cab. And it's connected to this joint. We'll look at that in a moment. But you can just remove the cab. It's easier turning it from vehicle to robot by just taking the cab off first and then fitting it into place later. It's a little bit simpler just to kind of handle this chunk of plastic on its own. And then you want to make sure it's all lined up here. So we got that. You'll start to kind of see how the shapes work out. And I think that's what's really cool about it, is that you got kind of an intuitive transformation. I will say it is a little tricky in some spots, but once you start to see familiar elements like, oh, hey, that's the windshield of the truck cab, right? So you can kind of get some sort of shapes together. And so it kind of goes back to, you know, Transformers are also puzzles thing that a lot of people like about Transformers. What I like about Transformers as well is that puzzle aspect. I also love how this panel moves so you can push the tires out so that they rotate. And then you can line up the head, bring all this around. The smokestacks need to be out. So this piece goes up like this, and then this piece comes through to cover the head. So that way you don't have to look at Magnus's poor face here. I always turn the head backwards as opposed to keeping it face up. I found that's just kind of a better way to hide the head down there. And we'll rotate the tires out, and you can bring this cab piece up and then bring, like we had before, that's the roof. So the whole matrix cavity is essentially just like the roof of the cab. And that's some really cool like plastic origami going on there. And I really do like the way that works out. So there's our truck cab. Like I said, we'll just leave it off. You could leave it attached on that axis it's easier just to pop it off and call it a day. But I kind of like that. There you go. So there's truck cab. All right, back to the trailer. So then all this folds out, and you got to like click some stuff into place. Oh, before we do that, this is a thing I missed the first time. You rotate that around. So that happens, and then this will come and lay flat there. So this will come up. This will also come up. They'll click into place nice and neat. Make sure all the panels are there. The arms are fun because they flip out like this, and then you want to rotate and clip those clips into place. Kind of why I leave those clips like that, but they, technically leave them down like that. You just pop it, flip it, lock it in place like that. So pretty cool. The interesting part too is you got to rotate back like this. A lot of just different tabs and clip systems to keep everything in place. So you want to tab the two arms together across the way. Trying to figure, oh wait, I forgot a step. You got to flip those panels forward to add those little white sections out front. So then we clip them like that, clip this back here like that, bring this around, and you want to pull this little tab and it'll kind of fill out the box. It's still hollow in there. It just pretends like it's not, which is cool. And then back here, there is tabs. Oh, right, the tabs that fold out. So you got to fold the tab, bring it out like that, plug it in. And that is just so clean because it just, you plug, you attach, and then now that whole top of the car carrier is stable. And then we bring this up like this, make sure that's lined up, click, locked in place, bring it around, flip the panel, click, lock in place. And then once you have that, you should have a pretty solid trailer that's not going anywhere. You can hook up the missile launchers on either side of it like that, and that you can also add the two guns right there and right there. You can also leave them off for a little bit cleaner of a look, but for this we'll do that. So there we go. And then you just want to reattach the trailer hitch here and then push it in place to lock it in, and there you go. So yeah, here's this car carrier mode. As we will demonstrate soon, it is big enough to carry cars. If you want a turning axis on this, you want to pull it forward, and then you can see if you pull it down, it's going to come out. But if you pull it forward, it levels out, and then you can turn your truck. I found that it doesn't roll super well. Like all 10 tires here don't necessarily roll really well, but that's just kind of due to the transformation factor. But it looks really, really solid. I'm going to take the guns off for now, just to make it a little easier to manipulate. But what's really cool, it's like the thing I talk about with alt modes. I usually don't care that much about how the alt mode looks. With this one, we've never had a Magnus big enough to hold cars. I'm not gonna go transform all the Magnuses and compare, but the other ones, you either had, all armor parts on the interior, and so you can only put stuff on top, or it just wasn't big enough. This has got the hollowness needed to carry cars, because he is a car carrier. So for example, if you want to load up RC, you could put RC in there. She'll fit like all the way like that. If you then want to take Blur, just take his gun off the front. You could put Blur up in there, and then you can close the doors, and it's like, all right, cool, they're locked in. RC's sticking out a little bit there. I'm making a point here. You can put Cup up top, and then Hot Rod up here. And then boom, there you go. There's your classic 86 Autobot team rolling into battle, and you can have Springer fly in with his single helicopter blade, because I can't figure out where the sword is at the moment. And so you got kind of your Autobot team ready to roll for your Autobot City crew, which is pretty cool. The fact that you can actually squeeze all 4 of them in there are relatively easily. Now, this is a Thrilling 30 RC, not a Studio Series, but they're the same mold, basically, so, just ignore that. Now, you can, of course, work the gimmick a little bit further. So if we take them out, let's take out Blur, let's take out RC. Of course, I'm just setting these guys up here. There is a gimmick sort of displayed in the packaging, which is where you pivot here. And then that was the idea to like, the car goes up here and then it lifts this up and then you can roll cars underneath. So it has that feature, which is cool because I think that's really neat. It's not super practical for loading cars. Now, the question, of course, becomes, just like any trailer that's supposed to hold things, kind of like when people were wondering if anybody would fit inside Earthrise Prime's trailer. Which cars fit, which cars don't in the Magnus trailer? Okay, round 1, in no particular order, will be Skids, Mirage, Prowl, and Jazz. First of all, let's test them inside. Pretty sure Prowl's pretty skinny. He can roll all the way in to the vehicle. Jazz, no problem as well. Can we close the door on the two of them? All right, it lifts Jazz up a little bit, but you can close the door, which is pretty good. Now, of course, pretty much anybody will fit on top, but let's test the two of them. Yeah, they go up there. All right, Skids. Skids can roll all the way in. Yeah, he can fit all the way up here. Pretty cool. Mirage is too wide. All right, next up, Beachcomber, Sunstreaker, Wheeljack, and Red Alert. Let's get Red Alert's gun off here. So Red Alert, he's also the Sideswipe mold, and like anybody else that uses that mold, he'll fit up to a point. He won't go all the way forward, so he's kind of a back car kind of guy. But he can fit most of the way there. He's not too wide for the top either. Sunstreaker. Sunstreaker goes in. Can he get all the way through? Yeah, he's just going to run into stuff. So he's kind of like, you know, kind of like Red Alert, a little bit of a wider car. Wheeljack. Wheeljack's not making it through the door. His back axis is too wide. And then let's see with Beachcomber's also, yeah, he can kind of squeeze, but Beachcomber is also too wide. All right, now we'll try Bumblebee, Cliffjumper, Brawn, and Devcon. Devcon's not technically a car, but he doesn't have wheels, neither does Blur, so if we're doing Blur, we have to do Devcon. All right, Devcon first, too wide. Shoulders sticking out too much. You can put him on top pretty comfortably, though. Brawn is, oh, Brawn's a little too tall. Oh, can he make it in without the gun? Let's take the gun off. All right, Brawn can make it in without the gun on him, except he's only going to go about that far, so he's kind of a back car. Cliffjumper and Bumblebee should have no trouble. Yeah, Cliffjumper's got no problem. Let's get Bumble in here. Bumblebee's got no problem. You can actually get those two in the center section, not sticking out the front. Can we close the door? And close the door. Yeah, those are the ideal size, is the Bumblebee Cliffjumper. Okay, just for fun, we're going to try Point Blank. I don't have any idea if he'll fit. He's from a different era. Yeah, he's not going to fit. He's too wide. Anyways, it was worth a shot. Here's a quick shot size-wise with RC, Blur, Hot Rod, and Cup. I think size-wise, the truck mode totally fits perfectly. If the robot mode's a little big, the truck mode is basically perfect. And then here we have Earthrise Optimus with Ultra Magnus. Now, of course, the original toys, the Magnus cab and the Optimus cab were the same exact toy. So you can see they're about the same size. Though I will say that stylistically, the Magnus cab is a little bit more G1 than the Optimus cab. It is a little bit larger. I think it's a little bit thicker. But there's kind of your size comparison between Earthrise Prime and Studio Ultra Magnus. And then now we have the only size comparison that doesn't make Commander Rodimus Prime look like a complete waste of money. So lengthwise, if you butt them up against the wall, they are about the same length. So lengthwise, Magnus and Rodimus are the same size class. The thing with Rodimus is that compared to Magnus, where that trailer all becomes part of him, this is all that Rodimus becomes. This is just all base mode stuff. It's kind of cool to see that Magnus uses part budget more effectively than Rodimus, because honestly, I never display the giant base trailer thing they got going on here. They do look good together, you know, just barreling down the hallways of Unicron. They do look good together. So not to totally gush about the truck mode, but this one does what none of the other Magnuses do, which is actually carry cars. Combiner Wars 1 was too small inside, all the others had to keep armor parts, so it was always too much of a brick of a trailer. This is great. And the fact that the actual robot mode is not affected by having such a gappy vehicle mode is also really impressive, and I think it's just so cool to see them finally figure out the engineering on this. And also, again, in a way, I think more effectively than the Masterpiece did. All right, so here's the Autobot City crew, the ones that were in the main positions in Autobot City. You can see that Magnus is a little big. I will admit that. In a lot of shots of the movie, Springer was only a little bit shorter than Magnus, so he is a little large, but compared to the Siege and Kingdom, which were too short, I'll take it. Also because the trade-off of the vehicle mode here is definitely worth it. In addition to that, Transformer scale is as you make it in your own mental image, because there was no consistency in the original cartoon for G1, so I'm not really worried about it. I like Magnus being bigger. He is the city commander after all, and of course he should be a larger size in my opinion. And here is the crew of the ship when they went to Junkion. They weren't planning to go there, it's just where they ended up. You can see they look really nice together. I think Magnus, he is larger, but it's kind of like, it's force scale, but I like it. I actually like him being this big compared to everybody else. Also, are we ever going to get a Daniel that's not just this little pack-in figure from Slug? Because it's not working for me. I want a better Daniel. And here's the widest group shot you're getting today. It's everybody from the end of the movie. So everybody that helped defeat Unicron, everybody that they saved from Unicron, over here, minus Swoop, because we're still waiting on our Studio Series Swoop. But this is just kind of giving you a general scale of everything from you know, him being commander and Grimlock's leader, and then a bunch of Voyagers and Deluxes, and pretty much all the main Autobots that made it to the end of the movie. And then here's a shot, of course, with Optimus and Rodimus Prime, so you can kind of see the leaders together. It's funny that this guy is the same class as this guy. He just came with a big trailer. But anyways, you can see the three of them together look pretty nice. So interestingly enough, all three of them have a different matrix mold. The one for Earthrise Prime is smaller than the one for Kingdom Rodimus, and then the one in Magnus's chest is smaller than both of those because it originally came with Hot Rod, who did not actually have a chest cavity to put it in. And then here we have Studio Series Ultra Magnus, who's the first studio commander class with all the Generations commander classes. So, of course, Motor Master didn't come with the cars to fill him out, but he is the biggest because he is the Skeleton of Menasor. Of course, Armada Prime is bigger. Of course, Skyfire and Skylynx are bigger. That just makes a lot of sense because of what they are. I think for Magnus, he didn't need to be any bigger than he already is, and he's definitely not feeling not worth the money like Rodimus was. So I gotta say, I do love Commander class. Rodimus is the only one I felt wasn't really worth it. All of these are just spectacular figures. I'm so glad they gave us something between Leader and Titan, because this is just terrific. And at the end of the day, Studio Series Ultra Magnus is exactly what I've wanted from an Ultra Magnus figure since I was like 5, and the first time I saw the movie. I've always liked the character, I've always loved his design, but I've always been a little let down by previous versions. This is exactly what I wanted. It's everything I wanted, and even a little bit more. I didn't need the removable limb gimmick, but that's cool. I didn't need the chest to be spring-loaded, but that's cool. I like the fact that he's got weapon storage, that he comes with blast effects, that he's super posable for an Ultra Magnus. This is not historically a very posable character, which is really great. And the fact it also comes down to this really slim, clean robot, too, is just fantastic. I don't even have a problem with the $90 price point. While, yeah, get it cheaper if you can, I don't have a problem with that price because of the engineering level, especially with how you transform it to the car carrier, with all the extra little details like the chest and everything. It's a premium item, honestly. And yeah, while I love Armada Optimus, because, you know, I gushed about that in its review, I haven't wanted Armada Optimus as long as I've wanted a good Magnus. This just feels a little bit more impressive overall, and it feels like a complete package. Armada Optimus is still missing Sparkplug, but this, I don't know what else it could have included. And that is very rare in this day and age with Transformers. This is it. We don't need to do G1 Magnus again. And really, all I'm doing at this point with 86 Studio Series is like, man, could we get a new Springer? I mean, it sounds greedy because this one's good, but like, I don't like all his battle damage, and you know, maybe I can make him a little taller, like split the difference between this and Magnus. I feel like we could do better with Springer. So, on that note, before I keep gushing, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe, notification bell, and leave a comment while you're down there and tell me which is your favorite Ultra Magnus, whether he's G1 or Robots in Disguise or animated or whatever. I like them all. Honestly, I'm like, yeah, we don't need to update G1 Magnus anymore. This is it. This is peak Magnus. Stay tuned for more videos. There will be more Transformers videos on the channel. What exactly? You'll have to wait and see. You always can check out my live streams Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, where I get hints to new videos, as well as talk about the new news for Transformers and other franchises. And if you want to discuss Transformers, check out our Discord server in the link below. Come join our growing community. If you also want to find me on social media, you can at Soundout12. You can also find my graphic designer on social media and the Discord at DarkClaw643. And you can find Hero Club at heroesclub.com for news, reviews, interviews, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.